Welcome to Simpler Bible, a daily journey to biblical understanding. Today's episode is going to be very different from anything we've done before, and if you're listening to this, that's great. I also think it might be helpful for you later to watch this so that you can take some notes from it, but I'll put all of this in the blog as well on the website, so you'll have all these details here. So today I've called this the Jeremiah Overview before we start Jeremiah officially tomorrow. And I've called this, the subtitle is, What a Mess. Jeremiah is just a mess. Jeremiah is 52 chapters long, and the thing that's interesting about it is that it's not really in order. So, true, okay, like Jeremiah isn't in its correct place in the Bible. For you to do that, you'd have to break Jeremiah up into about 30 pieces. But the other thing is that the 52 chapters of Jeremiah themselves are not in the right order. I'm not really an audiobook listener. I like to read, but pretend for a moment that you like to listen to audiobooks and you've just wanted to listen to the audiobook of Jeremiah or pick another book. You're into mysteries. So you're reading some mystery book or listening to a mystery book, 52 chapters long. And instead of listening to the chapters straight through, you just hit shuffle like you do with your favorite album. And now all the chapters are out of order. That's basically Jeremiah. Jeremiah is out of order. And so we, for the sake of not being incredibly confusing, are just going to kind of plod through some key chapters of Jeremiah 1 through 52. But before we do that, I want to give you kind of an overview of Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel and how they all fit together. So Jeremiah becomes a prophet. According to the first the first couple of verses of the book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah became a prophet in the 13th year of King Josiah. And so Josiah is a king for 31 years. All of these, like I said, will be in your notes, but Josiah is a king for 31 years, and then Jehoahaz, his son, for 3 months, and then Jehoiakim for 11 years, Jehoiachin for 3 months, and then Zedekiah for 11 years. And then Jeremiah is going to be a prophet for another 5 months after the captivity in Babylon. And so Jeremiah, if you take the 18 years that he's a prophet during the reign of Josiah, the last 18 years of Josiah, plus 3 months, plus 11 years, plus 3 months, plus 11 years, plus 5 months. That's right, you get 40 years and 11 months. So Jeremiah is a prophet for 40 years and 11 months. What most people will do is say Jeremiah is a prophet for 40 years. And that's fair, I suppose. It's closer to 41 years. But Jeremiah is a prophet for 40 years. And so this book, this 52 chapters of Jeremiah, covers a pretty large span. And Jeremiah 52 is not the last chapter chronologically of Jeremiah. In fact, Jeremiah chapters 40 through 44 are the very last chronological chapters of Jeremiah. So Jeremiah, here's the very rough order of Jeremiah. As best I can tell right now, this is based off of kind of some work that I've been doing over the last few years. So if you wanted to read Jeremiah in its correct order, you would read it like this: Jeremiah chapters 1 through 20, I think, and then 26, 35, 25, 45 through 49, verse 33, chapter 36, then 22 through 24, then 27 through 31, 49 through 51, 21, 34, 37 through 38, 32 through 33, 39, 52, 40 through 44, and then finally the last 4 verses of chapter 52, which occur 37 years later. And so I'm just telling you, it's like a deck of cards just completely shuffled. It is not really in great order. So a couple of thoughts on that. If you want to try to understand Jeremiah a little bit better, we talked about this when we were finishing up the Kings. It's really, really helpful to know at least the last 3 kings of the nation of Jerusalem. So you have Jehoiakim, and then you have Jehoiachin, and then you have Zedekiah. And so when we are looking at this, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, Nebuchadnezzar becomes king, and this is where Daniel 1 starts. And then you come down here to the 3-month reign of Jehoiachin. This is where Ezekiel, the book of Ezekiel, technically starts, although Ezekiel didn't start writing for 5 more years. It's just this really kind of confusing mess. And all of these pieces, if you've ever kind of read through Jeremiah and you felt like, man, I just don't know what's going on here, this is why. It's because it's completely out of order. Let me give you an example really quickly. So if you looked at Jeremiah chapter 34, you're reading through the book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah chapter 34, and then what comes next? Jeremiah chapter 35. Okay, that's fair, except for Jeremiah 34 occurs 16 years after Jeremiah 35, which doesn't make any sense as you're reading it. And so it is completely a mess. You really need to be reading, and I'll include this in the show notes as well, or in the blog post, but you really need to be kind of reading Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel concurrently with everything else that's going on with the last 3 chapters of 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles. So Daniel, the book of Daniel covers the space of 70 years. And Daniel 1 is the very beginning of that 70 years, and Daniel 5 is 70 years later. So in just 5 chapters, you've had 70 years pass. And so Daniel covers a large chunk of time. Ezekiel begins prophesying in the 5th year of the reign of Zedekiah. And 6 years later is the 31st chapter of Ezekiel. So the first 31 chapters of Ezekiel deal with the last 6 years of the reign of Zedekiah. Meanwhile, Jeremiah is still alive. Jeremiah is still doing his thing. And Jeremiah goes with the people into captivity, or they're going into captivity in Babylon. Jeremiah stays behind. I'm just trying to tell you, this is a very messy book. And if you are interested in trying to understand better how the Bible fits together, we will include kind of an Old Testament outline. I've been saying that. It's in here now. It's with this. So with this lesson, the Old Testament outline is included in the blog. And so please go and look, and you can kind of get an idea for how all these pieces fit together. It's just, Jeremiah will make a lot more sense if you read it in its chronological order rather than chapters 1 through 52. Now, over the last 15 years, people have asked me, why is Jeremiah out of order? I have no idea. I truly don't. I've had several friends who have gone through seminary that I've asked that same question to. They don't. When they got to the Old Testament survey, they weren't told why Jeremiah is out of order. I have no idea. The only thing that I can surmise is that you have to remember that these are pieces of scrolls that have been found about the book of Jeremiah, or what we call the book of Jeremiah, and they were just assembled together at some point. And so why the Jews put this in this order? Because we kind of follow the same pattern of Jeremiah that the Jews had. So why the Jews put it in this order, I don't know. And so pay attention to the first sentence. Sometimes it's the last sentence of the chapter, but usually it's the first, second, or third sentence of a chapter. And it'll say, this happened in the 4th year of the reign of Zedekiah. And then the next one will say, this happened in the 4th year of the reign of Jehoiakim. So that would have been quite a bit earlier. Anyway, it's a mess. I know that this is not a super exciting lesson, but I want you to understand the Bible better. And I needed an avenue where I could kind of write all this stuff in here for you, and I'll write it all out. It'll make sense in the blog. So go and read the blog, or look at this again and get the order of Jeremiah if you're just wanting to sit down and read Jeremiah in its consecutive order. And then we'll do something like this again when we get into the New Testament, because we'll have to have a talk about the writings of the New Testament. But Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel are, chronologically speaking, just the hardest books to understand, because it's just like they're all, like throw them all up in the air, let them all land, and scoop them up together. And that's kind of how they are in the Bible in terms of chronology. So tomorrow we're going to get into the book of Jeremiah. We'll be in Jeremiah chapters 1 and 2. You're definitely going to want to read along with us, and I will try to point out to you kind of how these chapters are out of order as we go along. But my hope is that you will understand the Bible better as we continue to go through this. So have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow in Jeremiah 1 and 2. Thank you so much for journeying with us today at Simpler Bible through another section of Scripture where we come to know and understand God a little bit better. Look, if you're brand new to Simpler Bible, we have all sorts of resources available for you. Go to our website, simplerbible.com, and there you can find these videos, you can find our podcast, you can find links to our social media, and you can even find a blog post with additional scriptures if you want to go into a little bit more study than we had time to cover in this podcast and video today. We hope that this tool will be exactly that for you, a tool. Not something that replaces your daily walk with God, but something that enhances your daily walk with God and helps you to know and enjoy Him more. Thank you so much for being part of this. and we'll see you again tomorrow.